In this lesson, I'm going to demonstrate how to create a GUI interface and in fact use the TK widget to create a program. And essentially what we'll do is we'll create a simple program that is going to, let's say, convert feet into meters. Okay, and we'll use the formula, and I'm going to build the GUI interface, the menus, the sizes of the canvas, and then of course we'll add our formula as part of the GUI interface. So when the user clicks on the convert button, for instance, enters a value, and it would convert the numbers from feet to meters. So let's jump right in. I'm going to go ahead and start building our code. And first, of course, start with a comment. So this code is going to convert feet to meters. And to do this, of course, I'm going to do the from tkinter import this module, and then from tkinter import the TTK. And next, I'm going to start off with the definition. I'm going to say calculate all arguments. And the reason why we use, or why I used this particular definition as far as the parentheses asterisk args is concerned is because the calculate is essentially a callback function, right? So whenever you tell Python to calculate something, it serves as a callback function that may take any arguments. So you don't actually need to use, in fact, the args. You could specify exactly how many and which parameters it takes. But using this args is a good convention, is a common convention, in fact, when you don't care what they are. And this allows the callback to take any number of arguments without causing an error. So this is the reason why we typically use args as part of our calculate. So right after the definition, let's move forward. Let's do, let's say, try. I'm going to give some values here. Create our floats. I'm going to say feet.get method. And next, set our meters, set. And our formula essentially will be, say, 0.3048, I believe is the value, times the value of 1000 plus 5, and then divided by 10,000. Building our formula here, so it's going to try this first and then accept value error, and then if that's the case, it's going to pass it along. All right, great. Next, our root is going to be a variable, and I'm going to place the TK and then give it a method. There's a title, and for title it could be any text, say something like feet to meters. All right, so far we've imported the module and we've created a simple definition of calculate. Next, I'm going to use the actual main frame of the GUI interface. So let's begin. I'm going to say mainframe, for example, equals ttk.frame. And if I use TTK here, I'm going to use TTK import here as well. Okay, so we don't make any errors. But I'm going to write the code first, and then we'll test it out. So here, for example, let's say after frame, I'm going to say root, comma, and then the actual size of the window that's going to pop up. So let's say padding equals, and this is similar to cascading style sheet if you work with that. So it's 3, 3, 12, and 12. Next, I'm going to say mainframe dot create method, and here I'm going to say column, and my first column is going to be 0, for example. My row equals 0, and use my sticky equals north, west, east, and south. All right, so we're creating our GUI interface here. Let's continue. Let's do mainframe dot column figure, and this is going to be 0, and then let's say I'm going to assign a weight equals 1. And let's do our final mainframe here for the row. So row configure, and this is going to be 0, and of course the same weight. Great. Next, I'm going to define the feet and the meters. So the feet equals string, and then meters also the same, string variable, string var. Okay. All right, next I'm going to define the entry and use the grid method again. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this. Let's go feet entry ttk dot entry and bring up my mainframe. And next will be the width. So let's say the width equals 7, and my text variable equals feet. Continuing on, let's do feet entry dot grid, and of course my column, and this will be my second column, first row, and sticky equals, I'm going to use, let's say the west, east, west and east. And next I'm going to continue on creating the labels, right? So for example, my label would be ttk.label, bring up my mainframe, comma text variable, spelling's correct, equals meters, and then use the dot grid, bring up my column, which is in this case will be the second column and second row. So row is also going to be 2, and then my sticky will be west and east. Great. All right, next let's bring up our calculate function, because right after this we need to do some calculations. So let's do ttk dot mainframe, or not mainframe, I'm going to create a button here, right? So when user clicks on the button right after we define the column and row, let's fix this spelling here, column second, row second, and obviously in the second column, scroll down, will be our button. So this will be ttk button mainframe, and the text of the button equals calculate, comma, and of course I need to give the command as well, command calculate, and an equal sign goes in here, command calculate, use the grid, and of course set up my columns. And this time the column is going to be 3 and row 3, and my sticky would just be west. Great. So this is our calculate button, and in this instance we simply use the command calculate, do the grid method, and then of course define the column 3, row 3, and sticky to the west. Next, let's do ttk label for my mainframe, comma text, and we also need to add text such as feet dot grid, and of course use the same column as 3, column equals 3, row equals 3, and our sticky is going to be east at this point. All right, for the feet, the sticky is going to be west. In fact, east is going to be for, let's say when I do the equivalent to, because I need 3 things here. I need the feet, I need the let's say a text such as feet is equals or equivalent to, and then of course meters. So the feet is going to stay on the west, the is equivalent to, for example, is going to stay on the east, and then meters is still going to stay on the west. And of course, when you're creating a GUI interface, it's nice to draw a diagram if it's easier for you if you're starting off with this. But once you practice, then you can sort of like create a mind map as you're working with the great dimensions of your GUI interface. So next I'm going to do the ttk label, and by the way these are dots, and use my mainframe, and text equals, I'm going to say is equivalent to dot grid, and my column in this instance would be this goes in column 1 and row 2. Okay, so see what's happening here? I'm just defining 3 sets of columns and multiple rows, and I'm just placing these texts into those columns and rows wherever I like this to be displayed on the GUI interface. So this is in column 1, row 2, and my sticky is going to be east. Sticky equals east. All right, one last text that I need to place is for the meters. So just create a label here one more time. Mainframe text equals, and I'm going to say meters. And the position of this is going to be, let's say, dot grid column 3 and row 2. Row will be 2 again. And then my sticky is going to be west. Great. So once we've created the actual interface for our design, next I'm going to do a for loop here. So for child in mainframe dot winfo, and I'm going to use children, and then do the child dot grid configure, and do my padding or whatever I need to do. So I can say something like pad x equals 5 and pad y equals 5. Next, bring my feet into focus, right? So I need my feet, the entry dot focus method, and then bind it, root dot bind, and do the return. And the return, in fact, is going to be in brackets, return, and then do the calculate. Finish it off with my root dot main loop. Great. So we've designed the GUI interface to calculate feet into meters. I'm going to test it out and see if there are any errors, and if there are any, we'll of course correct those. But let me just quickly run through the code one more time. We imported the module to find the calculate, gave the root, set up our GUI interface, created all the labels. All right, great, looks good. So let's run it, Control B, and it says can't find the underscore main module. And this is because let's first save our program here. So I'm just going to quickly do a Control S to save it. And I'm going to call it meters.py. And once it's saved, let's run it again. And this time we need to take a look at line 8, which is of course our formula here. So just verify meters.set, which is fine. 0.3048 times the value, and then of course we need times, right? So we need to multiply 10,000 and then of course add. All right, great. Let's run it again, and let's go to line 25 to fix up our quick error here. And of course line 25 we need to have, let's say, sticky equals. So if we don't place an equal, Python doesn't recognize this. And I'm also going to fix the calculate to lowercase c. All right, looks great. Let's run it one more time. And let's fix our line 16. And line 16 is mainframe.column. This in fact should be configure, not figure, right? So it should be column configure. And then similarly, we have our row configure. Great. Good troubleshooting. Line 19. Capitalize S for the string. Let's go to our line 25 one more time. All right, for these labels, let's make sure our syntax is using the same convention. When you're coding, sometimes we make these mistakes as you're typing, right? So these are just simple syntax mistakes, but the important part is that we understand the actual code and the logic. Okay, we can always revert back to our code. All right, so I'm going to save this one more time. And once I save it, I'm going to run it again to see. And this time when I run, it successfully runs and brings up our GUI interface. Let me drag this in the middle. So it says feet to meters. And then we created our field called feet is equivalent to our labels, and meters and feet are labels that we created here. And then of course our calculate button. So if I were to enter something in feet, let's say I like to convert 40 feet. So just type in 40, click calculate. Perfect. Is equivalent to 12.19205 meters. Okay. So similarly, if you want to try it again, let's say 1,000 feet, click calculate. It's going to say it's 304.8005 meters. And you can play around with this GUI interface. So for example, if I go back to my code and I need to change, let's say the paddings of this GUI interface, right? So for example, if I change this to, let's say 240 by 240 and run it again, notice the size of the window becomes larger. So depending upon your own requirement, you can in fact set this environment up, and you can place these labels, text, the button anywhere on the screen. Similarly, if I change this to, let's say 25 to 25, run it again, notice in this instance the GUI interface adjusts accordingly. And we're using 3 columns, and then we're using 3 rows. Okay, so this way you can create additional columns if you need to. If you need to place an image here on the GUI interface, you could do so. So in this lesson, I just wanted to demonstrate the basic GUI interface module and then creating a program using Python GUI. So I hope this helps practice, and let's move to our next lesson.